What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. And as you may know, the Rockets, they were just eliminated by the Los Angeles Lakers from the 2020 playoffs. And over the next few weeks, there's going to be a lot of big decisions made about the Rockets' future, whether to give Mike D'Antoni an extension, whether Daryl Morey will be fired, and whether the duo Westbrook and Harden will be split up. But today, I don't want to focus on those issues. I want to key in on James Harden and just examine how good a playoff performer he's been since he came to the Rockets in 2013. So, in the 2013 playoffs, James Harden and the Rockets, they were matched up against the Oklahoma City Thunder, led by Kevin Durant. And OKC in this series, they would go up 2-0, but in Game 2 of that series, Russell Westbrook, he would go out with an injury, leaving Serge Ibaka as Kevin Durant's only other reliable scorer. And in Game 3 with no Westbrook, KD would put up 41, 14, and 4 on 43% shooting, compared to James Harden, who put up 38 and 6 on 41% shooting. And in the closing moments of this game, Kevin Durant would have a go-ahead three-pointer with 35 seconds left that would give the Thunder a 1-point lead. Now, on the other end of the court, James Harden would have an absolutely terrible pass that would lead to a turnover, and Oklahoma City were going to win this game by 3 points. And with Houston losing this game, they would go down 0-3 to the Thunder. Now in Game 4, which is an elimination game for the Rockets, James Harden would put up 15 points, 3 assists, 1 rebound, and 10 turnovers on 33% shooting. Definitely not a great game from an all-star caliber player. And in the fourth quarter, it wasn't much better for Harden as he re-entered the game with 3:16 left in the game with the Rockets up by 6 points, and he would proceed to go 0 for 3 from the field, including an air ball 3. And the only reason the Rockets won this game is because Serge Ibaka missed a bunny layup as time expired, and the Rockets, they would survive this game despite James Harden playing absolutely awful. And to James Harden's credit, he would come back in Game 5 and lead the Rockets to a victory, setting up Game 6, another elimination game. Now, in this game, Harden would have 26 points, 7 assists, 6 boards, with 4 turnovers, while shooting 32% from the field. And the Rockets would lose this game by 9 points and be eliminated 4-2. So, in that series, Harden definitely didn't play great, and he was definitely outplayed by KD. And I think I'm being very fair saying Harden underperformed in that series, given the circumstances that Russell Westbrook, he was out for 4 games that series. Now, fast forward to the 2014 playoffs, and the Rockets were now a 4 seed, and they were matched up against the Portland Trailblazers, who were the 5th seed. And in Game 1 of this series, James Harden would have 27 points, 6 boards, and 5 rebounds, with 4 turnovers, while shooting 29% from the field, 21% from 3, and 80% from the line. And in the closing moments of the fourth quarter, Harden would miss a game-winning shot, and in overtime, he would also miss the go-ahead shot and the game-tying shot. And up to this point, Harden has really struggled in the late-game moments, making the big-time shots, and that was definitely apparent in Game 1 of this series. Now in Game 2, Harden would be much worse, only having 18 points, 3 rebounds, 4 assists, with 5 turnovers, while shooting 32% from the field, and the Rockets, they would go down 0-2 in this series, despite having home court advantage. Now, in the last 3 games of this series, James Harden would average 29 points per game, 6.3 assists, 5 boards, while shooting 42% from the field, 31% from 3, and 92% from the line, which I would say is living up to James Harden's standards. And with the Rockets down 3-2, heading back to Portland for an elimination Game 6, Harden would put up 34, 6, and 4 on great shooting splits. And at face value, I would say those stats, they are absolutely phenomenal, and Harden deserves no blame for this series. But if you take a deeper dive and look at the clutch time moments in this game, James Harden, he once again would not rise to the occasion. And with the score tied at 96, James Harden would drive in and have an air ball shot. And despite that air ball, he would get another chance to give the Rockets a lead, but again, he would miss a shot with 4 seconds remaining, and luckily for Harden, Chandler Parsons, he would have a putback layup that would give the Rockets a 2-point lead. Now, unfortunately for Harden and the Rockets, Dame Lillard, he would come back with an all-time great buzzer beater that would eliminate the Rockets 4-2. And if you look at this series stats, Dame Lillard, a rookie, outplayed James Harden, who at this time was a perennial all-star. And around this time, Harden, he was definitely considered a top 10 player in the league, and for top 10 player standards, it's definitely unacceptable to get outplayed by a rookie in a playoff series. Now, let's move on to the 2015 playoffs and look at the second round versus the LA Clippers. Now, in this series, James Harden and the Rockets, they would go down 3-1. And Harden during his first 4 games, I would say he played alright. He definitely didn't play spectacular, but I would say he played decent. Now, most of the time when a team goes down 3-1, the series is effectively over. But that would not be the case for Harden and the Rockets, as they would come back and win Game 5 in Houston and move on to a Game 6 in Los Angeles. Now, in this Game 6, the Rockets would be down 89-70 late in the third quarter, but over the remaining 14 minutes of this game, Houston would go on a 48-19 run, and they would beat the LA Clippers. And for the fourth quarter, when the Rockets outscored the Clippers 40-15, James Harden, he was on the bench for the majority of this comeback. Now, headed back to Houston for a crucial Game 7, James Harden had 31 points, 8 assists, 7 boards, and 7 turnovers on 35, 29, and 83 splits, and the Rockets, they were going to win this Game 7 by 13 points. And the weird thing about this comeback is that Harden actually performed better in the first 4 games of this series when the Rockets were down 3-1 compared to the last 3 games of this series where the Rockets won all 3 games. I just find that extremely odd, but nonetheless, the Rockets and Harden, they would advance to the Western Conference Finals to play Steph Curry and the Golden State Warriors. Now, in this Game 1 of this series, James Harden would have 28 points, 9 assists, 11 rebounds on 55, 33, 83 splits, compared to Steph Curry, who would have 33 points, 5 assists, 6 boards on 59, 55, 67 splits. Both players played extremely great. Now, in Game 2 of this series, Harden would have a near triple-double with 38 points, 9 assists, and 10 rebounds. But once again, during the final moments of this game, James Harden, he would not come up clutch and rise to the occasion as he fumbled the ball away with a chance to win the game. And I think on that last play, Harden, he was definitely very indecisive and he looked very uncomfortable in the last closing seconds of that game. Now, with the Rockets down 0-2, they were looking to avoid the dreaded 0-3 hole that no team in NBA history has ever come back from. Now, in this game, Harden, he would definitely not show up, having 17 points, 4 assists, 3 boards on 18, 21, 91 splits, and the Rockets, they were absolutely embarrassed in Game 3, and they would lose by 35 points. And I will give James Harden credit. In Game 4 of this series, he would have 45 points, 5 assists, 9 boards on 59, 64, 92 splits. But once again, James Harden, he would be a no-show in the biggest game of the series, having 14 points, 5 assists, 6 boards with 12 turnovers on 18, 0, and 77 splits. And the Rockets, they would lose this series 4-1. And I think one of the big criticisms that Harden gets that is well-deserved is that he is very inconsistent with his game-to-game performances, and I think that is very apparent in the 2015 Western Conference Finals, as Harden one game, he's giving you 30, 10, and 10, and the next game, he's barely giving you 20 points on 20% shooting. Now, if you look at the summary of this series, with the 2 best players being James Harden and Steph Curry, I would say Steph Curry, he definitely outplayed James Harden, especially considering that the Warriors, they won this series in 5 games. Now, let's move on to the 2016 playoffs, as in the first round, they would once again be matched up against the Golden State Warriors. And in Game 1 of this series, Harden would have 17 points, 3 boards, 2 assists, with 6 turnovers on 37-60 splits, and he would attempt no free throws. And the Rockets, they'd be blown out by 26 points. Now, a very interesting thing that gets lost in this series is the fact that Steph Curry, he was out for the majority of this series, and in Game 2, he would not be playing. And even with Steph not playing, Harden would once again shoot under 40%, and the Rockets, they would lose by 9 points. And Steph Curry, he would also be out for Game 3, but in this game, Harden, he would have his first big-time playoff moment as he finally hit a game winner over Andre Iguodala to give the Rockets a Game 3 victory, and they avoided going down 0-3 in the series. Now, in Game 4 of this series, Steph Curry, he would attempt to play, but after aggravating injury in the first half, he would be out the entire second half. And Harden in this game, he was once again extremely inconsistent, having 18 points, 10 assists, 7 boards on 31, 25, 85 splits, and the Rockets, they would lose by a massive 27 points and go down 3-1 in this series. Now, in Game 5 of this series, Harden, he would have a bounce-back performance, having 35 points, 6 assists, 6 boards with 7 turnovers on 52, 43, 89 splits. And once again, at face value, you say it's a great game from Harden, but when you take into account the Rockets, they lost by a massive 33 points. Those stats, they are largely meaningless, and when you take into account that Steph Curry wasn't playing, that makes it even more embarrassing that Harden and the Rockets lost this game by 33 points, resulting in them losing this series 4-1. Now, with that very disappointing first-round exit in 2016, Harden would come back the next year in the first round and absolutely dominate the Oklahoma City Thunder, led by Russell Westbrook. And for this series, Harden, he would average 33 a game with 7 assists, 6.4 boards, 5.6 turnovers on 41, 24, 90 splits, and Houston, they would win in 5 games. Now, in the second round, the Rockets, they would match up against the San Antonio Spurs, and is also one of the most forgotten series of James Harden's career. And if you look at the first 4 games of this series, all these games are really blowouts, as in Game 1, the Rockets, they win by 27 points, in Game 2, the Spurs win by 25, Game 3, Spurs by 11, and in Game 4, the Rockets win by 21 points. Now, Game 5 of this series, it was the closest game of this series, and it was in San Antonio. And the winners of Game 5 in the series, they go on to advance 70% of the time, so this was definitely a crucial game for the Rockets season. And in this game, James Harden, he would have 33 points, 10 assists, and 10 boards, with 9 turnovers on 46, 27, 88 splits. Now, with under a minute left, the Rockets, they were down by 2 points, and James Harden, he had an isolation play at the top of the key, but instead, he deferred to Eric Gordon, who would go on to brick a three-pointer. And despite that Eric Gordon missed, the Rockets, they would have yet again another chance to send this game into OT, but James Harden, he would be blocked by Manu Ginobili as the clock expired. And that is yet again another instance of James Harden not being a great late game shot maker. So with the Rockets losing Game 5 in San Antonio, they were headed back for a Game 6 in Houston facing elimination. And in this Game 6, Kawhi Leonard, he would not be playing, and even with that being the case, James Harden, he would still be a no-show, having 10 points, 7 assists, 3 boards, with 6 turnovers on 18, 22, 67 splits. And the Rockets, they would lose by an embarrassing 39 points, and the Spurs would win the series 4-2. So this second round series versus the Spurs, it basically had everything. It had Harden playing extremely well, as well as him playing extremely bad. And after playing absolutely awful in that Game 6, he would be torn to shreds by the media all summer long, and he definitely came back from the 2018 season motivated to have one of the best seasons of his career. And he definitely did that, winning MVP and breaking all types of scoring records. And in the first 2 rounds of the 2018 playoffs, James Harden, he was dominating, and he would advance back to the Western Conference Finals, where he'd once again matched up against the Golden State Warriors. Now, as everyone knows, at this time, Kevin Durant, he was a member of the Golden State Warriors, and they were definitely the overwhelming favorites to win the championship, and they were just a dominant super team. And if you look at the three-way stat comparison with KD, Curry, and Harden, I would say Kevin Durant, he's the best player in this series, but James Harden, he was not far off from Steph Curry's production, and this was definitely a solid series from James Harden. But if I had to point out one criticism, it would come in the Game 7 of this series, as this Rockets team, they would go 7 for 44 from 3, and they would miss 27 straight three-pointers. And Kevin Durant in this game, he would have 34 points, 5 assists, and 5 boards on 52, 46, 70 splits, compared to James Harden, who would have 32, 6, and 6, with 5 turnovers on 41, 15, and 75 splits. And the Rockets, they would lose this Game 7 and lose the series 4-3. And for this series, I wouldn't put the blame on James Harden. I would lay the blame more at Mike D'Antoni's feet, as Mike D'Antoni, he made absolutely no adjustments to the Rockets' game plan, and he just proceeded to watch the team miss 27 straight threes. Now, skipping ahead to 2019, James Harden, he would once again have an absolutely dominant regular season, putting up all-time great scoring numbers. And in the first round of the playoffs, the Rockets, they would beat the Utah Jazz in 5 games, and Harden, he would perform pretty well. His jump shot, it was shaky that series, but all in all, I would say he performed up to Harden standards. Now in the second round, the Rockets, they had once again matched up against the Golden State Warriors. And I would say Harden, he had a great series. Now once again, I do have a slight criticism of Harden when it comes to fourth quarter play and clutch time moments. In Game 6 of this series, Kevin Durant, he was out with an injury, and in the fourth quarter, James Harden would have 10 points on 4 for 7 shooting with 4 turnovers, including a huge offensive foul against Draymond Green and a costly inbounds turnover with 1:25 left on the clock that would lead to a Klay Thompson three-pointer. Now compare James Harden's fourth quarter to Steph Curry's, where Curry had 23 points on 5 for 8 shooting with 0 turnovers. And the Rockets, they would lose by 5 points, and they would lose the series 4-2. So in the biggest moments of the biggest game of their season, Steph Curry, he outperformed James Harden. And Harden being outperformed in the clutch is a constant theme of his playoff career that you see from 2013 all the way to 2019. Now, let's move on to 2020. In the first round, the Rockets, they'd be matched up with the Oklahoma City Thunder. And Harden in the first 6 games of this series, he was absolutely phenomenal, averaging 32, 8, and 7 on 49, 34, 83 splits. And he did that with Westbrook missing the first 4 games of this series. Now, I do have something to say about Game 6, as in this Game 6, Harden down the stretch, he absolutely disappeared, and he was nowhere to be seen in the closing moments, as Russell Westbrook, he basically went AWOL, and he took over and took all the bad shots. And down the stretch, you would think Harden would demand the ball, but in Game 6, he did not do that, and it definitely deserves to be noted. Now, in the deciding Game 7 of this series, James Harden had 17 points, 9 assists, 3 boards on 27, 11, and 89 splits. And despite having an absolutely horrible offensive game, Harden, to his credit, he would come up big with a game-saving block on Lou Dort that would effectively save the series. And coming off that emotional 7-game series, the Rockets, they matched up against the Los Angeles Lakers, led by LeBron James and Anthony Davis. And to everyone's surprise, the Rockets, they would actually steal Game 1, as Harden, he played out of his mind. But over the next 4 games, Harden and the Rockets, they would lose all 4 games. And in Game 4 of this series, with the Rockets down 2-1 and trying to avoid going down 3-1, James Harden, he would have 21 points, 10 assists, and 4 rebounds with 5 turnovers on 18-16-80 splits. And if you watch that game, James Harden, he was absolutely awful. And the Rockets, they would go on to lose this series in 5 games, and James Harden and the Rockets, they would be eliminated from the 2020 playoffs. For me personally this year, I was rooting for James Harden to kind of destroy the narratives that he isn't a good clutch time performer or a good playoff performer, and I think his playoff performances, they do go overlooked because sometimes he doesn't rise to the occasion in the clutch, and that really is just a fact that James Harden, he struggles with late game shots, and that kind of overshadows how great he is for the first 46 to 47 minutes. And if I had to describe playoff Harden in 3 words, I would say inconsistent would be number 1, streaky would be number 2, and number 3 would be mind-boggling. Sometimes if you watch James Harden, you have no idea what he's thinking on the court, and it seems like he's just completely disengaged from the game, and he doesn't understand what the stakes of the series are. And I understand that can be very frustrating, not only to Harden fans, but also to the Houston Rockets fans. And in this video, I'm not trying to take anything away from James Harden, as he's a great player, a top 10 player in the NBA, possibly top 5 in some people's lists. I just want to point out the reality of playoff Harden, that he really is not that good, and his track record is not that impressive. Now on the flip side of that, I will cut him some slack. I think it's unfair to expect his teams to beat the Golden State Warriors, who are the overwhelming super team of this era, and I think he gets a lot of undeserved hate for those performances, despite being the heavy underdog. So that's really all I have to say about Harden in the playoffs. If you have any comments or thoughts, let me know below. But besides that, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys next time.